where disturbance truly begins. Before going further, notice what you usually assume. Events arrive without meaning. They are neutral. What unsettles you is not what happens, but what you decide it means. This is the core Stoic truth, stated plainly by Epictetus and repeated here without comfort or excuse. You lose power the moment you assume. Assume intent. Assume disrespect. Assume failure. Each assumption feels automatic, but it is not forced. It is a judgment you accept without inspection. And once accepted, it directs your emotion, your speech, and your action. Not because the event required it, but because you agreed. Circumstances are not responsible for this agreement. Other people are not responsible. Timing, luck, and outcomes are not responsible. Responsibility cannot be outsourced. If disturbance appears, it appears because judgment was given authority too quickly. This is not a criticism. It is a boundary. The Stoic position does not promise comfort. It refuses blame. It demands clarity. You are not asked to suppress feeling or pretend events do not matter. You are asked to see where power is lost, and where it can be recovered. Between what happens and how you respond, something always occurs, a judgment. When that judgment is assumed rather than examined, freedom contracts. Notice this carefully. What actually belongs to you? Everything that follows depends on one clear distinction. There are things that belong to you, completely and without interference. And there are things that never will. Most disturbance comes from confusing these two domains. What belongs to you is narrow, but absolute. Your judgments, your intentions, your choices, your responses. Nothing outside this boundary is truly yours. Not outcomes. Not timing. Not other people's behavior. Not reputation. Not recognition. Not success as the world defines it. These may matter, but they are not owned. When you treat what is not yours as if it were, effort turns into tension. Attention turns outward. Discipline becomes frustration. You try to manage what cannot be commanded, and neglect what can. Consider a simple example. Someone speaks to you abruptly. The tone is sharp. Immediately, the mind moves to assumption, disrespect, dismissal, hostility. But notice what actually happened. Sound waves. Words. A sequence of events. The meaning you attach, this was intentional, does not belong to the event. It belongs to your judgment. Or consider delay. You send a message and receive no response. Minutes pass. Then hours. The event is silence. The disturbance is not silence. The disturbance is the story added to it. Disinterest. Rejection. Neglect. None of these are facts. They are conclusions drawn without evidence. In both cases, power is lost not because something external occurred, but because ownership was misplaced. You attempted to control meaning instead of examining judgment. This confusion is subtle. It often disguises itself as responsibility. You tell yourself you are being attentive, proactive, or prepared. But look more closely. Are you acting on what you can influence, or reacting to what you cannot? Stoic discipline begins by returning authority to its proper location. You do not deny that events have impact. You deny that they have command. Impact is unavoidable. Command is not. When this boundary is ignored, two things happen. First, effort is wasted. You rehearse arguments that may never occur. You brace for outcomes you cannot prevent. Second, resentment grows. Because when control is assumed where none exists, failure feels personal. The Stoic response is not withdrawal. It is precision. You attend carefully to what belongs to you. You refine judgment. You choose responses deliberately. And you release the demand that the world comply in return. This does not mean passivity. It means accuracy. You still act. You still speak. You still prepare. But you no longer confuse preparation with prediction, or influence with control. Notice how often frustration includes the phrase "it shouldn't be this way." That sentence reveals the error. It assumes authority over reality. Reality does not accept appeals. What is within your authority is how you meet what occurs. The tone you adopt. The restraint you exercise. The conclusions you allow to settle. These are always available, even under pressure. This boundary is not philosophical abstraction. It is operational. When honored, energy consolidates. When ignored, energy disperses. You do not become indifferent. You become aligned. This explains where effort is misplaced, but not yet how disturbance takes hold. The moment you agree. Now we look at what actually creates disturbance. The distinction between what is in your control and what is not is necessary, but it is not sufficient. Many people understand it intellectually and still lose composure. The reason is simple: control fails or succeeds at a single point. That point is assent. Something happens. An impression appears. This is automatic. You do not choose it. Sound, sight, memory, sensation, thought, these arrive without permission. The Stoics were clear on this. Impressions are not the problem. What follows is optional. After the impression comes a judgment. This is where meaning is proposed. This is bad. This is unfair. This means something about me. These judgments often appear quickly, but speed does not make them compulsory. Then comes assent. Agreement. Consent. The moment you agree with the judgment, disturbance begins. It is critical to see this sequence clearly. Impression, judgment, assent, emotional response. Most people collapse these steps into one. They say, "I was angry," or "I felt disrespected," as if the reaction were unavoidable. But anger is not the first event. It is the consequence of agreement. Impressions arrive uninvited. Assent does not. Consider criticism. Someone points out a mistake. The impression is sound and meaning neutral. The judgment appears: "This threatens my competence." If you assent, tension follows. Defensiveness. Irritation. If you do not assent, if you pause, the same words exist, but the disturbance does not. Or consider misunderstanding. A message is interpreted the wrong way. The impression is confusion. The judgment suggests intent: "They meant this negatively." Agreement produces resentment. Refusal to assent leaves the matter open, unresolved but calm. This does not mean you deny feeling. Feelings arise naturally. Tightness, heat, alertness, these can occur before conscious thought. Stoic discipline does not aim to erase sensation. It aims to govern agreement. Between impression and assent, there is always a moment. It may be brief. It may require training to notice. But it exists. And in that moment, freedom operates. Most power is lost because this moment is skipped. Assumptions rush in. The mind prefers closure over accuracy. It would rather be certain than correct. Notice how often you say, "I know what this means." That sentence usually precedes unnecessary reaction. Meaning is assumed, not examined. Stoic practice interrupts this reflex. Not with force. With attention. You learn to say, "This is an impression, not a verdict." You learn to delay agreement. You learn to let judgments remain provisional. This pause is not weakness. It is discipline. Importantly, refusing assent does not mean refusing action. You can still respond. You can still set boundaries. You can still speak firmly. The difference is that action follows choice, not impulse. Without this distinction, control becomes abstract. With it, control becomes operational. You begin to see that no one can compel you to agree internally. They can present impressions. They cannot command assent. This is why assumptions are costly. They shortcut the pause. They grant authority without review. and once authority is granted, reaction feels justified. But justification is not freedom. Freedom appears when you reclaim the moment of consent. When you stop treating judgments as facts and start treating them as proposals. Understanding the mechanism is not enough. It must be trained. What practice actually means. This is where most people misunderstand discipline. Discipline is often treated as force, as suppression, as endurance under pressure. But force is unreliable. It depends on mood, energy, and circumstance. When pressure increases, force collapses. Stoic discipline is not force. It is training. Training means repetition before pressure appears. It means shaping attention so that when impressions arrive, response is already prepared. You do not improvise judgment in the moment. You rely on what has been practiced. This is why insight alone does not change behavior. You can understand the mechanism of assent perfectly and still react automatically. Understanding explains. Training transforms. Discipline, in this sense, is not punishment for failure. It is not harshness toward yourself. It is not white-knuckled restraint. Those approaches exhaust the mind and create resistance. Instead, Stoic training works quietly. It teaches the mind where to look. The primary object of training is attention. Not emotion. Not outcome. Attention. You train yourself to notice impressions as impressions. You train yourself to recognize judgments as optional. You train yourself to pause before assent becomes automatic. None of this requires intensity. It requires consistency. Many people wait for high-stakes situations to test discipline. This is a mistake. Pressure exposes habits, it does not build them. Habits are built when nothing dramatic is at risk. A delayed response. A mild criticism. A small inconvenience. These are training grounds. If you only attempt discipline when anger is already high, you are late. The work is done earlier, when stakes are low and attention is available. Another misunderstanding: discipline is not the elimination of emotion. Stoicism does not aim to make you indifferent or numb. Emotions will arise. The body reacts before philosophy speaks. The goal is not to prevent feeling, but to prevent surrender. You allow sensations to exist without granting them authority. You let the initial reaction pass without adding narrative. Over time, this changes the intensity and duration of emotional disturbance, not by suppression, but by lack of reinforcement. Think of it this way: every time you assent to an unexamined judgment, you strengthen that pathway. Every time you pause, you weaken it. The mind learns from repetition, not intention. This is why discipline feels difficult at first and easier later. Not because life becomes simpler, but because response becomes trained. There is no dramatic moment where discipline is achieved. There is only accumulation. Quiet adjustments repeated daily. Importantly, Stoic training is humane. It does not rely on guilt. Guilt is just another judgment, "I should have been different," added after the fact. That judgment does not improve attention. It only adds noise. Training observes failure without commentary. That was automatic. Noted. And then returns to practice. You do not scold a muscle for being weak. You train it. The mind is no different. Discipline, then, is not about winning internal battles. It is about reducing the number of battles required. When attention is trained, assumptions lose speed. The pause lengthens. Choice reappears. Training remains abstract unless it appears in daily life. Applying discipline without drama. This practice is proven in ordinary moments. Philosophy fails when it stays abstract. Discipline works only when it enters the day quietly, without performance or intensity. What matters is not how you act under extreme pressure, but how you relate to what happens repeatedly. Daily life provides more than enough material. The first practice is anticipating impressions, without anxiety. This is not pessimism. It is accuracy. You remind yourself that inconvenience will occur. Delays, misunderstandings, fatigue, resistance from others. None of this is surprising. When the mind expects ease, friction feels like injustice. When the mind expects reality, friction feels ordinary. You do not rehearse disasters. You simply remove the assumption that things should go smoothly. This reduces shock. And shock is often what accelerates assent. You enter the day prepared to meet impressions, not protected from them. The second practice is pausing before assent. This pause does not need to be dramatic. One breath is enough. Sometimes even less. The purpose is not to calm yourself, but to interrupt automatic agreement. An impression appears. A judgment proposes itself. Instead of following it immediately, you create space. This is an impression. Nothing more is required. You are not arguing with the judgment. You are not replacing it with a positive thought. You are simply withholding consent. This pause restores authorship. It reminds you that agreement is optional. Over time, the body learns this rhythm. Reaction slows. The sense of being pushed around by events weakens. Notice that this pause is easiest to practice when stakes are low. A minor annoyance, a brief delay, a small irritation. These moments are not beneath discipline. They are where discipline is built. The third practice is evening review, without guilt or praise. At the end of the day, you review reactions. Not outcomes. Not achievements. Reactions. Where did you assent too quickly? Where did you pause effectively? Where did assumption take control? This review is factual. Almost mechanical. You are collecting data, not assigning moral value. Guilt is unnecessary. Guilt is just another unexamined judgment layered on top of the original one. It does not sharpen attention. It clouds it. Likewise, praise is optional. Pride can be as distracting as regret. The point is not to feel good about discipline. The point is to understand how the mind behaved. You note patterns. Certain situations. Certain people. Certain times of day. This information is useful. It guides future attention. Then you stop. You do not replay the day endlessly. You do not justify. You do not condemn. You rest. These practices are modest by design. They fit into normal life. They require no isolation, no special mood, no retreat from responsibility. Most importantly, they do not rely on motivation. They rely on structure. Over time, something changes. Not the world. Not other people. You. Assumptions lose urgency. Judgments present themselves more quietly. The pause becomes familiar. You begin to respond rather than react, not because you are calm, but because you are present. This is discipline without drama. No suppression. No force. No self-attack. Just repeated accuracy. When this practice becomes stable, a different kind of freedom appears. What cannot be taken from you? Now we can speak precisely about freedom. Freedom is often misunderstood because it is confused with comfort. Comfort depends on conditions. Freedom does not. Comfort requires cooperation from the world. Freedom requires only clarity of authority. Life does not become easier when discipline is practiced. Inconvenience continues. Loss continues. People remain unpredictable. Outcomes remain uncertain. Stoicism makes no promise otherwise. What changes is where authority is located. When you stop assuming control over what is not yours, and stop surrendering control over what is, something stabilizes. You are no longer negotiating your inner state with circumstances. You are no longer waiting for permission to be composed. Freedom, in the Stoic sense, is inner sovereignty. It is the condition where judgment answers to reason, not to pressure. where response is guided by choice, not reflex, where dignity does not depend on being treated well. This freedom is quiet. It does not announce itself. It is visible mostly in restraint, in the things you do not say, in the reactions you do not indulge, in the assumptions you decline to accept. Importantly, this freedom is not achieved once and kept forever. It is maintained daily, sometimes hourly. There will be moments when you lose it. You will assent too quickly. You will assume intent. You will react before noticing the pause. None of this invalidates the practice. What matters is not perfection, but return. Return to what is yours. Return to judgment. Return to choice. This is why Stoic freedom is durable. It does not depend on winning, persuading, or being understood. It does not require approval. It survives failure intact. When freedom is defined this way, no one can take it from you. They can inconvenience you. They can oppose you. They can misunderstand you. They cannot compel internal agreement. Assumption is the opposite of freedom. It hands authority outward. It says, "This controls me now." Discipline reverses that gesture. You stop lending power where it does not belong. Over time, this produces a noticeable shift. Not dramatic calm. Reliability. You become predictable to yourself. You trust your responses because they are chosen, not improvised. This is not emotional detachment. It is emotional responsibility. Nothing outside you must change for this to begin. No conditions are required. The only requirement is attention, practiced repeatedly. Freedom, here, is not a reward. It is a function. And it is always available. Nothing more needs to be added. Holding inner sovereignty. The conclusion is simple. You lose power when you assume because assumption bypasses choice. It treats judgment as fact and reaction as necessity. Stoic discipline restores power by slowing this process and returning authority inward. Nothing discussed here asks you to withdraw from life. You still engage. You still care. You still act. What changes is the source of your movement. You no longer move because events push you. You move because reason directs you. Responsibility cannot be delegated. Not to circumstances. Not to other people. Not to past experience. Each moment of assent is yours. And because it is yours, it can be examined. This does not require perfection. You will fail at this repeatedly. Assumptions will slip through. Reactions will happen before attention arrives. This is not a flaw in the practice. It is the condition that makes practice necessary. Stoicism does not ask you to justify these failures. It asks you to notice them and return. Return to the pause. Return to judgment. Return to what belongs to you. When this return becomes habitual, something stabilizes. Not constant calm. Reliability. You become someone who can be trusted by yourself. Your responses align more often with reason than with impulse. This is not comfort. Comfort depends on how things turn out. This is freedom. Freedom depends only on whether you keep what is yours. The work is not dramatic. It is repetitive. It appears in small moments that seem insignificant. Those moments are the practice. Nothing here requires escalation. Nothing here requires withdrawal. Nothing here requires permission. Practice this today in something small. That is the discipline. That is the freedom. And it is yours.